Binge the full week of The Ray Taylor Show ad-free over at inspireddisorder.com/plus.
This is The Ray Taylor Show.
Ocean's 11 from 1960, the original. Not the remakes, which I have to say I enjoyed the remakes far more. This is the first time I watched the original film. Kind of the birth, the first time a movie, as far as I know, was able to collect a bunch of these big stars to put them in a movie. And it really feels like that was the only selling point for this film. Because every other aspect of it, I don't think is very well done. But we do have big stars of the time like Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. You have Peter LaFord, Angie Dickinson, Richard Conte, Cesar Romero, Patrick Wilmore, Joey Bishop, Akim Tamirov. You have Henry Silva, a bunch of other people. I stopped recognizing names a little while ago, but I put them out there just in case some of you might know them. But, yeah. I wanted to know. I wanted to see where the Oceans franchise came from because I'm reviewing I'm rewatching the franchise. And eventually gonna do a top 5, rank them all. And at this point, this would be on the bottom of the list. I still have to rewatch Oceans 12, 13, and Oceans 8. But if I had to guess, this would be my least favorite Oceans movie. And that's because this movie doesn't really feel like they cared too much about putting out a good movie. I've been watching a lot of classic film recently, movies from anywhere from the 30s to the 50s, 60s. Like, I've been watching a lot. Amazing movies. There are amazing movies have been made since movies were being made. It's not like they just got good. This is not an example of movies being good from back in the 60s. This is an example of a studio clearly just marketing, just putting a film together because of the names. It is as if the writer and director were unimportant aspects of this movie and just the casting is the only thing. Because the first third of this, or first half of this movie is like not really doing anything. Whereas the remake, the first third of the film is introducing all of these different characters. This one is basically just following Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra being party guys in like Arizona and then Vegas, and like there's clearly they do jobs. Like there's a guy that's kind of their boss, their crime boss guy. But they don't want to talk to him right now. They're making him sweat for some reason, just being jerks. And it's just that. It's just it's like one of them getting massaged for some reason, and then there's a scene of one of them singing because that's what they did. So it's like we got to show them singing in this movie. There doesn't have to be a plot reason for it, but we just need to make sure they're singing. Even Sammy Davis Jr. plays a garbage man in this movie. Has a scene where he's got to sing. Of course, because that's what it has nothing to do, no bearing on the movie whatsoever. It's just you got to have a moment where he's singing because that's what people do who work at work in the garbage companies. They just sit around outside singing to each other on on their picnic bench. So it felt like very masturbatory. Like, look at what we did. We got all these big stars together, and they're doing the thing that they're known for, singing and dancing. Ooh, got to have that moment in there. Don't worry about a story. Don't worry about plot. We'll get to it. Even when they start to plan, even when, like, this team assembles, which people just kind of show up, right? The premise is they were all served in, like, the airborne. Right? They went to war together, so they're all buddies from that. But at no point does this movie try to, like, get you to know too many of them. Like, you see Frank Sinatra, you see Dean Martin, you see Sammy Davis Jr. kind of, you get to know him a little bit. And then there's this guy who's like the money guy or whatever, who's just like this spoiled brat who calls, "Mummy, I've run out of money, Mummy. I need some money. I'm a grown adult, but I need to call my mommy for some money." "No, Mommy, it's just spending money. It's me going around spending money. That's all I need it for. It's not an investment." "Thank you, Mummy." This grown-ass man asking his mummy for money.
The Many Faces is an ongoing abstract ink portrait series that I started many years ago. I release a new face every day, but go to inspireddisorder.com to check them out. So many available. But as a listener to The Ray Taylor Show, you can save 10% when you use coupon code INSPIRED when you check out. So go to inspireddisorder.com/TMF. That stands for The Many Faces. Go check them out. Browse the entire collection. And when you decide on a piece, or maybe multiple pieces, make sure you use coupon code INSPIRED when you check out, and you'll save 10%. As a big thank you for checking out my work, for collecting my work, and for listening to The Ray Taylor Show. And with that said, let's get back to the show.
So there's a lot of aspects of this movie I didn't really like. Then they get into the planning of it. The heist itself is pretty like basic. Like the idea is like, oh, we're gonna hit 5 casinos in Vegas, and it's cool seeing like old Vegas. Completely different. I mean, that's one of the interesting aspects of this movie is that you get to see what Vegas was like back then. You're not watching this movie for the heist. This is not on any top list of heists. It is not a very complex, intricate plan that they have. It's just like, let's mark the doors where the cash is with this infrared paint. All the doors are going to be pretty easy to get open. And guess what? All of the safes are going to be open too. This was planned instead of being planned during a big boxing match, which the remake is. This one is planned for New Year's. The moment New Year's, the ball drops and everybody celebrates the countdown, right after that is when they cut the power to these casinos and rob them. So similar in that way. They both cut power. But then it's like cut power, and then all the doors, they're marked with these like different markings for where this is where the money is. And then they all go into where the money is. And it's like the money is just out. People are counting the money for some reason on the actual, like the moment it becomes New Year, like people are counting money. Like that's the time to be counting money. All the safes are all open. So it's like the most effortless heist. It is in so many ways about as complex as the heist is in Army of the Dead, which is a horrible film. Do not recommend, despite the fact that Zack Snyder still gets offered to direct and write movies. Horrible heist. This, on par with that heist. That one actually has a little bit more excitement, sadly. Like, this is even worse than that. Unless you're like, happen to be a giant Frank Sinatra or Dean Martin or Sammy Davis Jr. fan. Like, if you're a super mega fan of that, then maybe that's all. You just need to see them on screen, and that's enough for you. You don't need a story. You don't need good acting. I mean, this one is also like ADR all over. It's like so little of this movie do the voices actually seem like they fit the mouths. Like, it's clearly recorded post, which I'm sure happened a lot in movies back then or whatever. You're outside. Maybe it's hard to get the audio, but still this movie has a ton of it. And I'm sure a lot of this was filmed on a soundstage. But yeah, all over. It's just, you don't get to know any of the team. It doesn't seem like a very, the idea is they go into these marked doors where apparently safes are going to be open, so you don't even have to crack any safes. Just turn the lights off for a little bit. And then they fill these little duffel bags. Little duffel bags. Like it would be a medium-sized purse to most women, the size of this bag that they put the money in. And apparently I forget the amount of money that they're supposedly are stealing, but it can't be that much. And it's like put the money in the bag, then go outside, just walk outside and put it in a regular metal trash can, right? These are major casinos in Las Vegas, but for some reason these casinos have just regular metal trash cans that you can put the money in. And then, of course, Sammy Davis Jr. is going to show up because he's a garbage man, and he's going to just dump all that trash in the garbage truck. Not big dumpsters. These casinos weren't producing massive amounts of garbage at the time. They just had little tiny trash cans like just a single family home would have. Only one. They didn't have multiple of these trash cans. That was kind of stupid. But the movie really doesn't even get interesting until after they steal the money. After they steal the money, then it's like all these casinos get together and then they hire this guy that's going to help them find the money. And he's going to take a percentage he's going to take like 30%, he tells them. And he just happens to be the soon-to-be stepfather of the adult man that calls his mummy for money. Mummy, you're getting married to a guy that's going to be looking for me as a criminal because I stole all of this money. Mommy, can I have money? So I don't really care about any of these characters. I hope they get caught. They don't even seem like there's a fight scene in the early on. Like these guys are clearly supposed to be like, I mean, they're supposed to be war vets, but they don't act like, they look like pretty boys trying to be rough. They don't look like rough dudes. They look like pretty boys that, that would prance as they run because they've been actors and performers their whole life. They're not actual war vets, even though maybe some of them served or whatever, but who knows what they did when they were in. I doubt they were like pliing over foxholes, but they are like 100% pretty boys. And it's like, I guess it's the acting of the time. There weren't like toxic masculinity wasn't like in physical form yet. It was just in other abuses of power, but just not believable. Not at all. Which, I could have overlooked. I did overlook. That wasn't the only issue I had. I mean, the writing is sad. The heist was sad. They got the money. They went to money was in the thing. They effortlessly got out of Vegas, and he took it to the dump and effortlessly found these bags of money after he dumped the entire garbage truck out. And then he hid it, and then now, that dude's soon-to-be stepdaddy is looking for him, finds out it's them, because, like, they just happen to be vacationing in Vegas. Join Inspired Disorder Plus today. Head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus to join. Membership includes members-only discounts and deals. You get access to the Ray Taylor Show completely ad-free, as well as bonus episodes. You get access to the complete live painting archive. You also get access to every single podcast ever produced by Inspired Disorder, hosted by Ray Taylor. You get access to Ray Taylor's personal blog, as well as the opportunity to ask me any questions. So if you want to start a podcast, you're into art, ask me anything. And so many more things are being added every day to Inspired Disorder Plus. So sign up today, become a member, head on over to inspireddisorder.com/plus and become an Inspired Disorder Plus member today. And they just happened to run into somebody that saw their son there earlier. Like, it's just all coincidence that, like, that guy even was in any position to even begin to investigate anything. But he ends up finding out they have this plan. It's like, okay, how are we going to get this money out of here without giving him any, without the authorities knowing? So one of their buddies, after the heist, died in the middle of the street. So their idea is we're going to put the money in his coffin. And his coffin is going to be shipped back to like Washington or something, wherever, or San Francisco, wherever he lives. But of course, the coroner is like, oh, he convinces the wife, the spouse, to just bury him locally. So it's like, oh, that's convenient. And then so they all show up to this funeral because they know the money's in there. And they want to, they want to see that coffin go into the ground, right? Because that's where their money's at. But while they're sitting in there during the service, there's this like sound, this like white noise going on in the background. I'm like, what is that? It's like, oh, he's going to be cremated. It's like, oh, that's convenient. So ultimately, this movie is a bummer. Because nobody succeeds. Everybody loses in this movie. I guess at the time they probably didn't want these criminals to get away with it. Back in the 60s, it doesn't look very good. Not that it was that tough for them to get the money in general. Like they could have, instead of taking that money and putting it in the trash can, they could have just held onto the bag and just walked. And they probably would have made it out of Vegas. I mean, you probably would have needed a car because you can't really walk out of Vegas. But if they just individually with their little handbags of money, after they scooped it out of the already opened safes, if they just walked out of there, got in a car, and then drove to L.A., they would have been long gone before they shut everything down. I mean, but instead they put it in the trash can, then the trash has to go around and collect it, and by the time the trash guy, as soon as Sammy Davis Jr. collected all the trash cans and was heading out, then they had the roadblocks up. It's just not a good movie. I was so disappointed. I was hoping for it's not like people couldn't write good movies back in the 60s and the 50s. Like there's examples of amazing films that were made back then, well written. But this is not an example. This was clearly this is just the studio going we got some stars. Frank Sinatra. And all these guys look so old. Way older than what they're playing. It looks like a bunch of grandpas getting, and there's not a lot of differences in the way they look. As far as characteristics of all of the 11 that come to help them out, they all kind of look like generic white dudes for the most part. There's not a big difference in what they look like or how they act. One guy has a hillbilly accent, but other than that, it's just... It was disappointing. Very disappointing. So, it's on HBO Max. It's an interesting watch, if only to see what Vegas was like back then. And it is more interesting of a movie once after they get the money and they're trying to figure out how to, keep the money. That's interesting. So, the last third, maybe, of the movie is kind of interesting. So there's that, but the first part of this movie is pretty this movie could have been a short film. It probably would have been great if it was just a short film. Keep the cast, whatever, cut out all of that bullshit, and just be them stealing the money. You don't even have to have them, because the plan is stupid. It's just start the short film as they're all executing, they got the money in the bags, put it in the trash can, and then that's when the short film starts. But anyway... check it out if you want. I wouldn't hide. Oh, also, blackface. There's a scene where they go collect the money and then they're going to go put it in the coffin where they're all putting grease on their face, clearly doing blackface. There's even a joke to Sammy Davis Jr. about how he washes it off when he's done. So that doesn't hold up either. Not a very good movie, and then also blackface. Almost forgot that. Oh, and there's clearly wires when they lift the body out of the coffin to put, this was a very half-assed movie. Very half-assed in every way. Production, writing, the directing isn't anything special at all. It seems like the only thing they cared about was the fact that they got big stars. That's it. And then blackface. So I wouldn't recommend it. But if you're a completist, it's part of the Ocean franchise, I guess. Or at least, as far as something being remade, it's like, wow, they knocked it out of the park with the remake. Like, that is an example of, like, taking a bad movie and remaking it into a great movie. Instead of what most studios do now is they take really iconic movies and then they remake them to make more money. Like, that's all they care about now. They don't want to make bad movies into good ones. They just want to regurgitate old properties to triple dip on everybody that's just brand, like, worshiping. But that's it. Check out Ocean's 11 with the number 11, if you dare. It's from 1960.
New episodes of The Ray Taylor Show come out every single day. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere our podcasts are found. Binge the full week over at inspireddisorder.com/plus. Buy Ray Taylor Show merch over at inspireddisorder.com. And follow the show on Instagram at Ray Taylor Show. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Peace out!
Today is the day where you wake up and you realize that everything that you've been dreaming about, everything that you've been wanting, every goal and wish and hope that you've ever had can become real. Dreams can come true. What you manifest in your mind, you can bring to reality.